Hey, Jam.
Yes.
Have you ever wondered how it works when you have some pain and you take a painkiller and the pain goes away?
I have wondered about that.
Do you know about it?
I don't think I do, but I do know about pain, and I do know about taking drugs to get it to go away, meaning I have done that.
Okay.
I don't understand it, but I have done it.
You have done it.
In fact, I had a headache, and I took some Advil about 20 minutes ago.
An Advil, I think, is ibuprofen, right?
Correct, yes.
About 20 minutes ago, you say, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you how that's working in your body right now in today's episode.
Oh my gosh, that could not have been better. Not planned.
Not planned at all. You had no idea. That's so exciting.
Okay, sweet.
All right, here we go.
Let's do it.
Hey, I'm Melissa.
I'm Jam.
And I'm a chemist.
And I'm not.
And welcome to Chemistry for Your Life.
The podcast helps you understand the chemistry of your everyday life.
Okay, so we are going to talk about ibuprofen, but before we do, I want to shout out two things.
Okay, what?
One is this cool new sweatshirt we're wearing.
Whoa.
These are in honor of fall and back to school season. And yours truly becoming a college instructor. Yay, so exciting. I'm technically not a professor, although students sometimes call you that.
Right.
Technically, my job is I'm a lecturer, which means my whole job is teaching, which I love.
Nice.
And I'm really excited about it. And so we got these collegiate sweatshirts that Jam designed.
Yeah, I was thinking about it and thinking it was like back to school season and like Melissa said, like her getting that job. And it's something about this had not occurred to me before, even though, tons of podcasts and tons of, obviously every college and tons of different merch things do like a college deal. And I was like, we got to do that, obviously. So we got a bunch of different colors, and I mean, that's all the same design, but just in different colors and stuff. So go check it out on our store right now at chem4yourlife.com/store and pick one up.
And if you're wondering, you can Google what Elementis Propter Viatim means.
Who knows what it could mean?
That's our school motto.
Yes.
Chemistry for Your Life school motto.
Yeah, I attend chemistry. So once a week.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to do before we got started is a shout out to Shrikant. I can't remember. I think it's Shrikant, who I met at BCCE.
Nice.
I met him at the conference and he came up to my table and he was so fun. And he was like, oh my gosh, I'm fangirling right now because I hear your voice all the time, but I've never seen you in real life before.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, no, I'm fangirling right now because I've never met someone who knew our podcast. I mean, I'd met some teachers and they weren't that excited, but he was so excited.
Yeah.
And he was like, you just don't understand. When I was in the organic chemistry lab, before I got my PhD, I would just listen to you and Jam all day long while I ran columns. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I do understand because that's when I started to love podcasts, is when I also was in organic chemistry lab running columns. This like a purification technique that's kind of boring and takes forever. And so I was like, I truly do understand. And so that was really cute and fun. And no one's ever acted like that before. And we got a little selfie and I got permission to share a selfie. So
nice.
So cute, so excited. Shout out. That was the most exciting interaction I've had with a listener, maybe ever.
Wow, that's awesome.
I think Vianette, maybe our friend in real life, sometimes did a similar thing where she's like, I'm listening to you guys in real life and now you're here, but she already knew us.
Yeah.
So it didn't feel like it counted.
Yeah. It's weird to think of in a cool way, someone having all these memories and experiences of listening to a podcast, and I've of course have the same deal with podcasts I listen to.
Yeah.
And then to meet them, it's like, oh, we've sort of had a friendship of sorts.
Yeah.
But never has it been in real life IRL until this moment.
Yeah.
And, almost like meeting a pen pal or something like that.
Yeah.
So
it's very cool. It was so exciting. I loved it. And I just was so excited. And I definitely do know that feeling because, I have that same thing with other podcasts where it's like, no, I remember how this podcast helped get me through this really miserable time in my life. Or I remember where I was when I first learned this thing on this podcast. So
Yeah.
I definitely have those same experiences. Anyway, so it was really exciting and really fun. And I wanted to give you a little shout out. So thank you for that.
That's awesome.
Okay, now are you ready to talk about pain relievers?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. First, I'm going to fix my mic because this cord is down. I'm assuming a small child maybe came in here.
You know what? Actually, I think that's from when we did our community and we both unraveled ours. I think I've been able to prevent any children from microphoning in here.
And to learn about our community,
Yeah.
you can be a part of our community on Patreon. Okay, I'm not going to turn that into an ad. All right. So let's talk first about, before we can talk about how pain relievers like ibuprofen work, we have to talk about what pain in our body is.
Right. Okay.
And specifically the kind of pain that ibuprofen helps with. It's typically the result of an immune response called inflammation.
Right. Okay. I've heard of this. I don't really know what it is, but I've heard of this.
Okay, so inflammation is a result of blood and other cells that rush in to help your body if you have some kind of damage. And it's typically characterized, the four things it's mainly characterized by are heat, pain, redness, and swelling.
Okay.
And so inflammation, sometimes it feels negative to us, but it really is part of a positive immune response that's trying to help you heal.
Okay.
So like an example would be if you get a fever, your body is heating its temperature up. Heat is one of those responses, so that it can help fight off these bacteria. And that's good.
Right.
So for the most part, these things are positive. Okay. We can talk about how they won't always be, but for the most part, they are. Okay. And that response is regulated by molecules in our bodies called prostaglandins. And you can think of prostaglandins as kind of like a group of, I try to think about maybe Watchmen, or, like the guy in the Titanic who's supposed to notice that the iceberg is coming.
Right. Yeah.
There are people who warn you, oh, hey, we need help. Something's happening. Or the guys who signal on those little towers in Lord of the Rings,
Yes.
They signal to Rohan. I was trying to think of something like that.
Yeah.
Rohan? Can't remember.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, so the prostaglandins are sort of like that, where they're like, oh, hey, we need more or less, or maybe they're sort of like managers of people, but they're molecules that indicate we need more or less something somewhere.
Okay.
Another way of saying that is they regulate your immune response.
Okay.
And there's actually a few different types of prostaglandins, but you can just think of them as kind of a group of molecules.
Okay.
So when you have some kind of damaged tissue in your body or something that's going wrong in your body, the prostaglandins are going to be generated in higher amounts by those damaged tissues, acting as a signaler to say hey, body, we need help from our immune response over here. So then your body does send help in the form of that immune response, the heat, pain, redness, and swelling.
Okay.
And one podcast I listened to actually said there are prostaglandins that can make your nerves more sensitive to pain. So which I was like, that's crazy. So they could just do things like that, which feel maybe like they're bad. But I want to point out that, if you get a cut or something on your hand and it's starting to swell and inflame, you're aware of it and you can take actions to fix it. And you'll be more careful with it moving forward. And so it is beneficial to us. You can think from an evolutionary perspective. It's over time, us having this body that can heal itself and send signals to us that something's not right is beneficial.
Yeah, right.
So let's talk about how prostaglandins are made.
Okay.
They're made by starting with what I, as a chemist, would call a precursor. And that's kind of like a starter molecule. It's the molecule that we take and we adapt it for our purposes, or we react it with something else and change it to make it do what we want it to do. So in this case, there's a molecule that we get from eating called, oh man, I forgot already how to pronounce this. Arachidonic. I think it's arachidonic acid.
Okay.
Arachidonic acid.
And it's made out of spiders.
It's made of spiders. Yeah, exactly. So if I'm saying that wrong, sorry, biochemists. But so that acid, it's a fatty acid. And so fatty acid basically means it's like a long carbon chain with a specific functional group on one end. And on that end, it has a carboxylic acid functional group is what we call it. And just to remind people who maybe this is your first episode, or if you don't remember, you haven't listened in a little bit, a functional group is just a group of atoms that is arranged in a specific way and that has a sort of a characteristic function about it when it's arranged in that way. And that's why we call it a functional group.
Okay.
And this one, a carboxylic acid, is why we call fatty acids fatty acids. Fats are usually like hydrocarbon chains with just carbons and hydrogens. And then there's this acid functional group. And so you put them together and you get a fatty acid. Okay. So we eat this arachidonic, I can never say it right. We eat this AA, this specific type of fatty acid, either in meat, or if you're someone who doesn't take in meat, you can actually, your body can synthesize it from linoleic acid, which is in a lot of other things.
Okay.
Different type of fatty acid. So you either ingest or you can create this specific type of molecule, which is what we would call a precursor.
Okay.
So it's already in our body. Hang on, I lost my notes here. Okay. It's already in our body, and prostaglandins are made by taking that acid and doing an oxidation reaction, which we've talked about before, but it's basically adding oxygen molecules in, or adding bonds to oxygen.
Okay.
I said oxygen molecules, but I meant oxygen atoms.
Okay.
Adding oxygen atoms in, or adding bonds to oxygen. The more bonds to oxygen you have, or the more oxygen atoms you have, we call that an oxidation reaction.
Okay.
And then they'll be further reacted on to become the different types of prostaglandin, or the different types of signalers, kind of. But that first step, they all sort of go through.
Okay.
Okay. So this acid must go through this oxidation reaction in order to be the prostaglandin that we all need.
Okay.
To regulate our immune response.
Okay.
Okay. But the thing is, adding those oxygens in takes energy, and it's not necessarily energetically favorable, is what we say.
Okay.
So to make a reaction start, usually there's a point in it that requires the most energy, and you have to get over that hump for then the new molecule to be formed or whatever. And we call that little hump the activation energy.
Okay.
And if you don't have enough energy to overcome that, another option is to use an enzyme that makes a different pathway, or in some other way lowers the activation energy.
Okay.
So the way that enzymes work is I think they're big protein chains that are all folded in on each other, but essentially enzymes have a bonding site where a molecule can come in and it'll bond there, and then the reaction will happen, and then it releases it out all modified, or in this case, oxidized. So your fatty acid will bind to a specific enzyme called, I didn't write it down. It's COX for shorthand. I think it's cyclooxygenase is what the longhand is. So it will bind into this cyclooxygenase. I think that's it. COX for short. And then when it comes out of there, it has gone through the oxidation reaction. Okay. So you need that enzyme to be able to overcome the energy barrier that's needed for this oxidation reaction.
Okay.
So the way that ibuprofen, it is cyclooxygenase. There it is. It's written down in my notes.
Nice.
My little brain is very tired after adapting to being an instructor. I've been working most of the day today, like from 8 a.m. till 9 p.m. right now. Okay.
That's a long day.
It is a long day, but it won't be like that forever. I'm just suggesting. Okay. So the prostaglandins have to go through this enzyme to be able to ultimately be created and regulate your immune response, your inflammatory response.
Okay.
So if that enzyme is the key to making them, then what most non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, so things that stop inflammation, which causes your pain, they stop the inflammation response. What most of them do is target that enzyme, that cyclooxygenase.
Okay.
So they target that enzyme, and essentially what ibuprofen specifically does is it binds at the site where the fatty acid's trying to bind.
Okay.
So it's competitive, and it's trying to basically beat out the fatty acid so that the fatty acid can't come in and be oxidized and go onto your immune response. And so essentially it takes the spot. It's like a musical chair game.
Yes.
And the ibuprofen wins.
I was just thinking, it's just like what we talked about with caffeine.
It's just like what we talked about with caffeine.
Wow. That's crazy.
And so because it's blocked, then the fatty acid can't bind. It can't be oxidized. It's not going to be converted to your prostaglandins that you need.
Mm-hmm.
And that means your immune response is not going to be able to be as intense.
Interesting.
So it just basically inhibits your immune response by inhibiting that enzyme.
Wow.
And that's it.
That's really crazy.
It is really crazy. Something that I wanted to talk about is there's that carboxylic acid chain on those fatty acids. There's also a carboxylic acid on the molecular structure of ibuprofen. And the way that molecules bind into their little binding sites is actually not through a bind into enzymes. It's not through a bond. It's actually through intermolecular forces. And similar functional groups will have similar intermolecular forces. So it's likely that that feature of ibuprofen is part of what helps it imitate the fatty acid and sort of take the fatty acid spot.
Okay.
It's a little bit more complicated than that. There's I read a whole paper that they tried to do like an X-ray to figure out exactly the molecular structure, but that's a good initial starting point is they have similar functional groups, so they can do similar intermolecular forces, which if you want to learn about intermolecular forces, we've done a lot of episodes about that. That is what keeps the ibuprofen in the fatty acid spot. That's what allows it to compete.
Yeah, intermolecular forces, like the forces with many of these.
Yeah.
The forces with us and also many chemistry lessons.
Yeah.
And
that's how I like to greet other chemists.
Yeah.
May the force be with you.
Yeah.
Intermolecular forces be with you.
Yes. Yes. It really is a nice greeting, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I never do that. We don't do that. Okay.
That's interesting. This is what an odd situation this whole lesson is.
Why?
Well, I just mean I don't know that I would have been able to guess any of it. I wouldn't have. It's kind of confusing, and I've heard this about other things about the body before, where it's like this is a response our body's having, and it's not necessarily really bad, but we are countering it to make ourselves more comfortable.
Yes,
and that's like one of those things that's kind of confusing because we would think of, oh, the pain is bad. Not that it's not bad, but it's telling you about something that's going wrong.
Yes,
that's good.
There's a reason that
we want to know about that. I remember seeing this episode of House where this gal in the show had some real disease that is real or disorder, whatever you want to call it, where she couldn't feel pain. All kinds of problems that she has. And
isn't that what leprosy is?
Oh, I don't know.
Maybe not. I don't know. I'm not an expert in that area. Do not take that.
But then it really makes you think like, oh yeah. Something could be going really wrong and I don't know about it. And that's not so cool. But so that's one thing that's kind of crazy for me to wrap my head around. Like, oh, this is a good thing, but or it's not wholly bad or whatever, but so then that makes you think of ibuprofen in a different way. But I've never known anything about this. So I feel like I hope I can get it right. Is there anything else that I need to learn before I try to tell it back to you?
I do kind of want to respond to what you said. And I feel like what you're kind of getting at is like, oh, we have these immune responses. These are good. And we take the ibuprofen because we don't want to be uncomfortable. But sometimes our immune system doesn't really have like an emergency off valve necessarily. And so there are potential where your inflammation response is excessive and you're
Right.
starting to get a fever, up into the range that your fever is dangerous.
Yeah. Right.
And it's going to start damaging your brain or start causing problems.
Yeah.
And this also is a tool to help us regulate that when we have been, modern medicine knows, okay, now
Right.
our body it's not shutting off, or
mhm.
when I had I had a really bad pain in my tooth. I needed a root canal. There was an infection. And the ibuprofen actually couldn't help it because there was so much pressure that had built up that was actually what was causing the pain,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But I was like, okay, but you don't need to have so much stuff rushing to this area. Like I have the antibiotics, they're coming, but my tooth didn't know that,
Yeah.
And I guess there was such an immune response that it was so high that it could not really, and it was like, I took ibuprofen and it did not really have much of an impact,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but my body didn't know that. It was like, no, you're in a bad situation. I'm like, no, the
Yeah.
antibiotics are coming, but it didn't know.
Right. Right. Yeah. And also it's not like it really makes us not feel anything. It's not like it numbs us completely.
Yeah.
So we're not really like overdoing that. Obviously it's possible to, and there's recommendations about how much to take, whatever. But like, it's not like, oh good, now I can feel nothing.
Yeah.
And now I don't know if my tooth is hurting at all or not. Or I don't know if anything's going wrong. Like that would be bad, obviously. But
yeah, and that was a good sign to me that something was really wrong because typically ibuprofen does help.
Yeah.
Tooth pain. So
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So I don't think there's any other science that you need to know. There is a lot more science, actually. There's like fun stuff about the ibuprofen molecule itself and other things it can do.
Okay.
But I decided that I wanted to save that for another episode next week. And,
Nice.
Because I felt like this is a little short, but that would be a little bit too long if we added it in.
Yeah.
So I figured that would be a good place for us to, leave off. And then we'll do a part 2 with like ibuprofen, more science behind it.
Okay.
What else can it do? And
Yeah.
also, I think I might mix in a little of, what's the other one? I can never remember. Aspirin. What aspirin does too.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
So we, in I guess a bunch of parts of our body where we could have something go wrong and need to tell our body that we're in pain and stuff, we have these.
Maybe not tell that we're in pain. Say that there's damage.
Tell it there's damage, which is pain, I guess. Right.
Well, the inflammatory response is part of the pain, is part of what causes pain. I don't know if the damaged tissues themselves cause pain or not, honestly. Probably because there's nerves. I don't know.
Okay. So yeah. Great. Okay. So it's trying to tell us that there's damage. Something's not right. We have this fatty acid there. And for it to then sort of sound the alarm, it needs to become something else first, right? And in order to do that, to become the prosthesis, God, I don't remember. Dang it. Prostaglandin. I remember there's a G in there somewhere. Prostaglandin. Okay. To be able to become that, and that is then what triggers the inflammation response after that.
You can think of it as that. Yeah. Okay. There's like prostaglandin H and prostaglandin G, and they sort of like do slightly different things, but I think that's a little too in the weeds. So let's just say, yes, once you do that reaction, then you have prostaglandin that is able to regulate the immune response.
Okay. And so, but this fatty acid needs to have more bonds to oxygen in order to become prostaglandin.
Yeah.
Right. And it can't just do that willy-nilly. Yeah, I mean, I can't either.
No, you can't either.
We can't just like have more bonds to oxygen whenever we want.
I thought about this again while I was doing this episode, and I feel like I think about it a lot. It's like I, as an organic chemist, would have to do these oxidation reactions, but then it's like, but our body is also doing them. So it's like I am already doing them.
Yeah.
Inside me.
It's like teacher or whoever, professor, whoever asked me to do this, I already am doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah.
See this inflammation on the cut on my finger?
Yeah.
I did it.
Yeah. So it has to have more bonds of oxygen to become prostaglandin, or but in order to do that, in this case, it needs an enzyme. Did you tell me the name of it, or is it just?
The enzyme is cyclooxygenase.
Yes, right. COX, cyclooxygenase.
COX for cycloox.
Cycloox, and that enzyme, just attaches more oxygens to it.
It assists with the reaction. A lot of times enzymes lower the activation energy, or they like give you another, I guess the best way to say it is, the name for it would be like mechanistic pathway, or like another route to get where we're trying to go. Maybe is a good way of thinking about it.
Okay. And so it does that, and then we're on our way to like successfully signaling to other parts of our body that need to know it. Hey, damage is here. And that whole thing, that whole process is inflammation, right? Okay.
The signaling is like, okay, send us blood with all the things that we need in it. And along with that comes pain, inflammation, heat, and what did I say? Pain, heat. There's 4 things. I learned it.
Salt, acid, fat.
No. Heat, pain, redness, and swelling.
Heat, pain, redness, and swelling.
And it's because blood is rushing to that area, and it's bringing all the cells that do good things that help fight off bad stuff.
So another reason why this is not bad, because it's trying to do something good.
It's trying to repair
most of the time.
Fight infection. It's doing something to help heal your body.
Yes. Okay. Got it.
Which is weird because inflammation is good. Doesn't seem like intuitive,
right?
But it's good when it's helping you heal your body.
Yeah. I guess it's like, do that for a second and now stop doing it.
Yeah.
You know,
it's good when it can be regulated properly.
Yeah. And so when we want to regulate it properly, we take a pain reliever. In this case, is the way this one works specific to like ibuprofen?
Some other ones act similarly, but I'll say I think that's good enough. I think most of the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, so that's where the NSAID comes from. NSAID is N for non, S for steroidal, A for anti, I for inflammatory, and then D for drug, I think. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug.
Okay.
They work by inhibiting the COX enzyme, but they have different ways of inhibiting it.
Got it.
And some they bind and then they bind reversibly, so then they'll leave. And some bind permanently, and that has other impacts on long-term health. So that matters. So I think that's the type of stuff I want to talk about a little bit more next time.
Got it. So in this case, we're talking this one. We're basically talking about the way that ibuprofen does, and a couple others probably similar, where the once we've taken it and it's found its way to where the area where we need it to be, the place where we hurt our knee or whatever, the place is currently inflamed, it's red, it's warm, it's blood has rushed to it, all that kind of stuff. It goes in and takes the place in those enzymes, in the COX enzyme, that prevents it from actually working with that fatty acid and helping that lower that activation energy and helping it to successfully sound the alarm. It basically prevents that from happening.
Yeah.
Which I guess if it's already happening, then it takes some time, but it would slowly stop it from continuing to happen temporarily in this case or whatever, and take that place, not let it happen, and we slowly stop feeling those results, the effects of the inflammation. We stop feeling the pain, maybe the swelling, redness, heat, whatever stuff starts kind of chilling out for a time.
Exactly.
Wow. That's crazy.
The one thing I want to clarify is basically it blocks the fatty acid from being able to get to the site.
Okay, get to the site.
So like, what could be a good analogy for that? What could be an analogy for like something goes in and it gets something and comes out and something else blocks it from even being able to go in?
Health department comes and shuts down a restaurant.
Or maybe like if there's an emergency response, like if there's a bank robber or something, it's like people go in and they try to get money and they go out, and they go in and they try to get money and they go out. But if there's something that's unsafe about that, if it gets to a point that's not good, then police officers can come and stop entry and exit. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to come up with an exact analogy. I tried to think about it today too, and it was just hard to come up with something that's like, it's like if you have a chair and somebody else takes your chair.
Yeah.
You know, that's basically what happens is this fatty acid has a place it's supposed to go and do what it wants to do, and something else blocks it.
Yep. Yeah.
Maybe like a little kid, you know?
But
little kids are really good at stealing the best chair in the house. The biggest chair that's like twice as big as them, you know?
What's hard to also include in the analogy is obviously that it's especially able to do that. And of course, not just anything could. It's like, it's what's sort of hard about like a chair, for instance. Like, well, anyone can sit in a chair.
Anyone can sit in a chair.
But it's like, what is it that like could block specifically you know, this sort of thing? I thought of something funny that one of my kids did that was only sort of related.
Okay.
But, so we have these little like child locks in our bathroom, you know, various things in some of our drawers and stuff like that we don't want the kids messing with, or could be harmful to them, or just could make a big mess, you know? And so we put these little like magnet, like locks in there, which basically you put the magnet up to it. It like causes this little latch to drop down, and then you can actually open the door. One time, one of my kids put a very small little like piece of chalk, like not like sidewalk chalk, like big, but like a very small one, almost like just for like a chalkboard at school or something, and put it under the latch on the inside of the drawer, which meant that and it's so weirdly perfect because it needed to be the right size. It's like, how did I think it was my 3-year-old, he was 3 at the time, did this. And so then the drawer could close, but then couldn't open back up at all. Like, oh my gosh. Even with the magnet, because it was being blocked, that thing just wouldn't fall again. Yeah. And so we had to basically like rip the drawer open, and that part had to like break all the way for us to get open. Oh my gosh. So it was perfect. I do feel like that's a really good response though, is like you put the magnet up and the thing drops down and it's made for the magnet. Yes. But you found a different way to where the thing couldn't drop down and it couldn't do what it was supposed to do. Well, you didn't find it out. The 3-year-old did. Yeah. But I do feel like that is kind of what happens. It's like this enzyme is made to take this specific thing and do something with it. And ibuprofen finds a way to not let it do what it's supposed to do. Yeah. There we go. That's a really good analogy. See, that's why we have Jam. It kind of works. And that's why now I know why my son did that. You know? Yeah. He was trying to help you out with this concept. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. But it was weird how it's just like one of those things where like a kid would notice this. Like, oh, hey, there's a little spot here. Oh, hey, I have a piece of chalk that would fit there. Just like, oh my gosh. So ridiculous. That's funny. Dang, this is fascinating. Thanks. I thought it was really interesting. And I had a lot of resources that you can find in our show notes, but also I double checked with friend of the show, Claire, and made sure that my understanding of the way that ibuprofen worked made sense. And she said, yes. Nice. And now here, I can read you the message she sent me. And now that we've had this message, you can understand it. I messaged her and was like, hey, is this roughly how it works? And she said,
Yes, that's exactly how it works. Prostaglandins basically mediate the inflammatory response, fever, redness, pain, etc. And they're produced by the COX enzyme system. And NSAIDs inhibit the COX. And y'all would have no idea what that meant before this episode started, and now you do.
Holy. Yeah, that's crazy.
Unless you're a biochemist.
It's like it's written in code and you've just given us the code.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's my goal as a teacher in general, is to just give my students the code.
Nice.
Or the tools that they need to be able to decode the code themselves.
Right. Like the Rosetta Stone, basically. Yeah. Like, here's the stone. Use this. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I was going to wrap it up with some categories and be like, when was the last time you used ibuprofen? But you already told us.
I did tell you, yeah.
You ruined it on the front end.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I actually did drink a good amount of water today. I was just kind of going a lot. And I don't know why, but I was like just feeling the slightest beginning of a headache. And usually when I feel that, it really does actually happen. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I think it's going to be hard to learn some chemistry tonight if I am feeling like a headache is going on. So
I also accidentally gave mine, which was the last time I took it was when I had my tooth thing, and it didn't really help because the pain was primarily, I think, from the pressure of the buildup of stuff there. Okay. It did help a little bit.
I have another question we can answer that's not that important.
Okay. What's
your favorite, like when you're buying ibuprofen, what's your favorite format for it to be in? You know, there's the different shapes, there's the different colors.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, so I used to just go with whatever one was a cheaper.
Yeah.
And normally I think I favor those like oval discs that almost look like M&Ms.
Yes.
But when we were out of town and I was desperate, I had to go full on Advil brand.
Whoa.
And that's a brand, right?
Yeah,
Advil.
Yeah.
So I don't usually buy the brand name thing, and they went down easier. They were like smoother because they I feel like their coating was better. So it's probably that proprietary name brand coating.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is kind of a pleasant experience.
Luxury. Yeah.
Then I just bought went back to my generic brand. Yeah.
I'm with you. I like to buy off brand, but I like that I specifically like getting like at CVS and Walgreens, stuff like that. They have, various off brands. It's like, oh, here's the one that's intentionally meant to look like Advil brand. Here's one that's intentionally meant to look like Motrin brand.
Yeah.
I like their one that's meant to look like Motrin brand because it's the M&M shaped discs, but they're like orange, like bright orange.
Oh, I always thought they were oblong for some reason.
They have that too, but this one's specifically like the M&M ones. And so maybe it's not like Motrin, maybe it's like something else, but it is just ibuprofen, same milligrams, all that kind of stuff. But something about that is so much more attractive to me. I'm like, this is really going to help. But the pale, that pale, pinkish.
That's the one I normally get. It's like maroon. Yeah. It's like terracotta almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
For me, I don't like that as much. And I've noticed that those can get that crystalliness if they get old or whatever.
I was going to revisit the crystalliness in next week's episode. Nice. So that's a good teaser.
And so I for some reason, this may not even be true. It seems like the orange ones that are really, really orange don't get crystally as fast.
Well, I felt like maybe the Advil brand might not get crystally as fast too, because I was like, oh, this coating is, I feel like, less susceptible to that.
Yeah.
But it was all just, that's not based in science. That's just based on how I felt when I looked at it.
Yeah. And the reason I have an opinion is because I feel like I'll take all the placebo effect I can get. You know? It's like, if I think this seems better, I will feel better.
It never occurred to me to interrogate in my own self why I preferred that one kind over the other.
Yeah.
Or to even realize that I did.
Right.
I would have been like, just whatever. But no, it's not just whatever. I specifically look for those ones. Those are the ones that we have in our house.
Yeah.
But also I wonder if part of it helps me to categorize it. Because, there's ibuprofen, and then there's one that you can take with ibuprofen that's not an NSAID, but I can never remember what it is. So it's I know the ibuprofen looks like this, and I know the Advil or whatever, or what's the other stuff?
Acetaminophen, Tylenol.
Yes, the Tylenol is I usually get the white pills of that. So it's I have okay, this is this and this is this, because the names get mixed up in my mind really easily. But if I can keep those shapes, if
that's a good point.
The shape
is that's a good point. It's nice to have a real clear distinction. Yeah.
So maybe that's why.
Yeah, maybe so.
Or maybe that's just what my mom always had.
Yeah. My grandmother always had the liquid gels, which I thought was like really fancy. I was like, man, fast acting, like, whoa, like that's fancy stuff.
And we can also talk about fast acting stuff next week, or how quickly it acts and how that's a function of chemistry too.
Okay, nice.
So, but it just felt like a little too much for one episode.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, well, that was a good category. That was better than my idea. Good job.
I mean, I think yours would have been better if we hadn't both already said it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think certainly the average person is probably more interested in like when we took it last and not like, what's your favorite kind of Advil?
I don't know. That's a good question. Sometimes when people ask questions like that, I'm like, wow, yeah.
Yeah.
I never thought to wonder about
have
that.
a favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jam, for that good idea. And thank you so much for letting me teach you about ibuprofen and how excited you were. That was kind of fun.
Thanks for teaching me. And for, diving into this topic and for, being willing to give me a little piece at a time. I appreciate that very much, especially at this hour. So getting the other stuff next week will be really cool. If you have a question, idea, thought, something that you think might be chemistry, please send that to us on our website at chemforyourlife.com. That's chemforyourlife.com to share your thoughts and ideas with us. If you'd like to help us keep our show going and contribute to cover the cost of making it, you can join our super cool Chem community of patrons on patreon.com/chemforyourlife. That's where you can interact with us. You can get our exclusive community episodes that are bonus episodes. You can get an ad-free version of the show, all that kind of stuff as our way of saying thank you for supporting the show and keeping it free for everybody else. If you're not able to do that, though, you can still help us by subscribing on your favorite podcast app, rating, writing, review on Apple Podcasts. Those things, and also subscribing on our YouTube channel and Spotify and various other places, rating, writing, review on those places, because that helps us to share chemistry with even more people, helps us to be found by others who are looking for chemistry.
This episode of Chemistry for Your Life was created by me, Melissa Collini, and him, Jam Robinson. Jam Robinson's our producer. He makes all this beautiful audio magic happen. And this episode was made possible by our financial supporters over on Patreon. And like Jam said, those supporters mean so much to us. You all make Chemistry for Your Life happen. You make it accessible for even more people, and you make it feasible for us to continue doing this show week in and week out. So thank you so much to Chelsea M., Dorian V., Scott B., Jesse R., Sierra L., John T., Avishai B., Bree M., Brian K., Carol R., Chris and Claire S., Chelsea B., Derek L., Elizabeth P., Emerson W., Hunter R., Jacob T., Christina G., Katrina H., Latila S., Lynn S., Melissa P., Nicole C., Rachel R., Sarah M., Stephen B., Suzanne P., Timothy P., Venus R., Erica B., Cullen R., and Jeanette N. Wow, it's so fun that list has gotten so long. And thank you again for everything you all do to make Chemistry for Your Life happen. And special thanks to Bree, who sometimes creates illustrations to go with episodes of Chemistry for Your Life. You can see those on YouTube. And I think that's it.
And if you'd like to know more about today's chemistry lesson, you can check out the references for this episode in our show notes and also in the description of the video on YouTube.
Yay
chemistry. Oh, yeah. And yay references.
Yay chemistry.
Yay chemistry.
Bye.